Welcome to Lifetime Talks. I'm Jamie Martin.
And I'm David Freeman.
And in this episode, we are talking about some training approaches for three common fitness goals. We know that many people work out with a goal or certain desired outcome in mind. But the thing that makes the biggest success for people most times is often having a plan that gets them there. So we're going to be talking through those goals and a plan with one of our go-to guests today.
Yeah, we got Danny King back. I always talk about Down with the King. He is a master trainer and director of performance and recovery at Lifetime. Welcome back, Danny. How you feeling?
I feel great with that intro. I am very excited to chat with you guys now.
David just brings the energy right off the bat.
He
Like,
he
let's
does,
just do
yeah.
this thing. So, all right. So, we need to have energy to have goals and to set goals. So, why is setting a goal, Danny? Like, let's just get into it. Why is that helpful when you're having a fitness routine or you want to start a fitness routine? And for those who might struggle with that, like, how do you coach them to figure out what that right goal is for them?
Yeah, I think it's so important really for two reasons. The first one is pure clarity. While all exercise is good, I'll always believe that, if you're exercising, you're healthier than not exercising in pretty much every scenario. By clarifying what your goal is, there are things that we would tweak and change to optimally get there. And that's obviously what we're going to talk about all the way today, but it allows us to set the plan correctly. And then it just keeps us anchored in why we're doing it and keeps us motivated, right? So if we have that set goal, it's something to come back to understand, are we making progress, or maybe remind us of why we're training for it and moving towards it. So creates clarity. And then it just helps us keep us connected and focused on that outcome that we're trying to get to keep us motivated and moving.
Awesome. How about for those people who struggle, right? Like how do
Yeah.
you help them pinpoint like what is their goal? I mean, I know David, you talk about this all the time. What's your why? Like how does that influence like the thing we go
Mhm.
after?
Yeah, I think really thinking about why it matters is really powerful. I mean, and I know David talks about this a ton and is phenomenal about kind of coaching people here. But no one does really hard things in life, for like to just feel a little better. The example is, if you got to start getting up really early in the morning to exercise, right? We're not going to do that for to just maybe feel a little bit better or to think about shedding a couple pounds. No, we do it because, and we'll do those uncomfortable things, get up in the morning, train harder than we want to, push harder than we want to, because of the real emotional motivator for us, right? Maybe it's being there for our kids. It's maybe about how we feel, look, perform in our bodies. These things matter, right? So there is this element of maybe talking to somebody, could be a fitness professional, could be a friend or family member that you trust, um, to help have them ask some questions around uncovering that why. And then even on a more surface level is trying to translate some of those emotional whys and those goals into something that can be measurable in an outcome, so we can have great emotions, but then trying to pinpoint around, okay, what's my primary focus, which is going to allow me to again change my style of exercise. Meaning, okay, my why is emotional around how I um, act, look, and feel and who I am, right? And it's a self-confidence thing. Well, if I start to then translate that, might be body composition oriented. And for me, when I was younger, it was muscle gain, right? Became the thing, right? So we take that why and then try to translate it across to something that I can meaningfully set targets or set parameters with my specific exercise to train correctly for.
Got it. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, I get excited about this topic. Obviously, we talk about speaking to the why, and I think everybody on here is familiar with James Clear as far as atomic habits, right? And one thing that I remember him saying, whether it was on a podcast or in his book, he asked these three questions: Are you interested? Are you engaged? Are you having fun? So, Danny, you just kind of said goal equals the outcome, right? The system is the process of getting to the outcome. So when you think of the word system, I use it as an acronym: save yourself time, energy, money, and stress. A system's put in place when you actually break that out. Why is having a plan, a system, so valuable when you're going after a goal?
Mhm. The ultimate reason is once you have a plan, once you have a system, I think a part of it is just now I can just run the plan and run the system. There's going to be days that you're high motivation, days that you're low motivation. And if I know what I'm doing, it just gets easier. I think
Mhm.
the simplified kind of example, but there's days that you don't necessarily want to wake up and go to work, but you do because it's the plan and you know what you're doing, right? That's your routine. I get up, I do my thing, I go. And Once you have your plan, sometimes you can treat, again, your exercise and fitness routine the same way. You're going to get up, you're going to do your thing, you're going to go to it. So I think that there's that. And then again, there's just clarity. If I don't just have to get myself into the place to get the workout in, right? To whether it's my basement, whether it's Lifetime, whether it's wherever I'm going, I have to think of what I'm gonna do when I'm there and hold myself accountable. Oh, that's way too much. But if I just simply know, all right, I got to get there, and then here's what's on the piece of paper, and I'm going to complete that thing. I'm going to do it. I'm in. It's just going to make it so much simpler and smoother to get it done.
Hey, and let's go right off of that. You just said it. You
Mhm.
use work as an example. It's the master of showing up, mastering the art
Mhm.
of showing up. And it
Yeah.
was another thing that I remember from James Clear. So I use the example of a class if I'm coaching at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. in the morning. And let's just say it happens to be raining or snowing in your case, maybe up in Minnesota. Now individuals will probably use that as, I'm probably not going to go because of the weather. And he said something along the lines as far as those who are able to navigate through inconvenience will always have the edge in this space. So I want us to unpack that because the master, the art of showing up is so beneficial because now when you're in their environment, you're in that space, it's probably a little bit easier to get it done versus if you don't show up. Yeah.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Another a mentor I had early in my career kind of used this idea of like most of your workouts are just going to be punch the clock workouts. They're not great, they're not amazing, but you're just getting them done, and you just got to kind of think of it that way. I'm going to come in, I'm going to put the work in, I'm going to do it, and the more that we can get tied to that, that it's just something that I'm going to do. And again, if we have that specific plan and that specific goal and that clarity to why we're there, it is just so much easier to do those things and to get them done.
Well, right, and your plan is really a form of accountability, right? And we also talk about, like, having accountability matters when it comes to following through, and another form of accountability is having support, a community. We talk about that all the time and the importance, like, Lifetime is a community and you can find support there. But let's just talk about, like, why having that community or support is important, whether it's a trainer, a friend, a class that you go to. Like, how why does that matter so much? And is there evidence behind that, like, that shows that it actually makes a difference in how people follow through on programs and plans?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could take that. One is, most of us have probably heard similar phrasing. Actually, might be in Atomic Habits, might be wrong though on that one, but it's in one of the very popular books. Is um, you are often like the people around you. So part of it is surrounding yourself with a community of people who are also doing similar things, training for similar goals. It partially just becomes normalized. We go to Lifetime. That's what we do, and those things happen. And then for a lot of individuals, they are more willing. It gets easy to prioritize others over ourselves and those things. And if we make a deal with ourselves, the only person who maybe knows that we are breaking that deal is ourselves, and that can just be we run a loose ship and let ourselves off the hook. But if I tell somebody else about it, or if David knows that I've committed to it, if Jamie knows that I've committed to it, now I've got to tell them that I didn't commit to it, and I've got to almost worry about disappointing others. And so the more people you can stack in your corner that are not gonna, make fun of you or yell at you, tear you down, but are there to support and hold you accountable and kind of in that bargain and are working towards that same thing, just the more likely you are to be successful and to get these things done.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I was just gonna add, like, I'm kind of a person who I like to work out on my own more frequently, but I do follow programs. What I found that is most helpful for me is that if I just, like, make sure my husband or 1 or 2 other people know what I'm doing, and they are, like, checking in with me just like, "Hey, how did that workout today go?" They may not be doing it with me, but they know that I've set that as, like, I'm working toward XYZ. So it's like, each of us is different. For some people, it is a class. For some people, it's being one-on-one, but just telling someone. So I think it's like just knowing yourself and recognizing kind of what works for you
Mhm.
matters within all of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. If you write something down, you're 2 times more likely to do it. If you share it with someone, you're 3 times more likely to do it. That awareness piece is so key. The power of human connection, I want to go into since we were speaking about community. If I'm the coach at the class, guess what? If I now go and connect somebody that's from the class to recovery, right, at the concierge, if I now go down to the cafe and connect them to somebody within the cafe or somebody to the spa, these points of connection now build again that community, and they're more likely to come more often because of those connections. When you are isolated, let's say you are more of an introvert, if you will, and maybe you don't want to be in groups, but if you still have human connection touch points, that matters. And I feel like we do a great job at that at Lifetime. So let's unpack a little bit more of that human connection. I know it's still, you need to get up, you still need to show up, but something about that community and human connection, let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, and there's all sorts of ways that come in, obviously, right? You have your background in group, which is a hugely powerful thing. Um, I've spent my life as a personal trainer. I'm going to make a call out to that. Is there can be something to have someone just unselfishly on your side, right? They are focused on getting you to the place, on checking in with you, on high-fiving you for that success and that desire. And they've, again, been hired to be on board for it, right? And I'm not calling out spouses or significant others here, but every once in a while it might be going to work out versus time with that person. And so could, change the relationship slightly in those things, but have someone who's fully in your corner just around exercise or getting those healthy habits done and being that kind of positive move that direction can be really impactful for people because they that's what they need, right? Or again, as we mentioned, it's just that person to see. Maybe you don't see maybe you don't see your trainer every single time you come in. You only see them once or twice, but they are checking that you've completed your workouts within the app or something like that and hitting you with that message or that follow up or that follow throughout time can just be really, really, really powerful.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of those common goals. We alluded to this at the top of the episode. So the three of them that we kind of have lined up, where it's like we want to build strength, right? We hear this a lot at Life. We want to build strength. For a lot of people, it's I want to lose some weight. And for some, it's they want to recompose their body. They want to tone up and do that kind of thing. So let's start with starting to build strength. Like for those who are new to strength training, how would you recommend approaching a strength training program for someone who's in this space?
Yeah. So if I take all three of those goals, they're all good news. There's a lot of if you just zoomed out and looked, you could be in a very similar plan for all of those goals. But there are a few things that I am going to tweak or change again, as we've said, when I clarify that thing. And when you say build strength to me, really the first thing that comes to mind that I think of as being really important is consistency. And when I say consistency, I mean that in two ways. Obviously, completing all of the workouts, each thing, but also consistency of what I'm doing on a session by session basis. If I want to build strength, the way that I ultimately do that is through a process called progressive overload. I'm overloading the system with more than I did the time before, right? So I used 100 pounds this week. I need to use 105 the next week, or I did 10 reps, I can do 12, right? That's how we do it. And one, that means showing up consistently every week so that I can do that. But even more importantly is I stay with the same things long enough that I can create that change. When we consistently switch our exercises too much, thing is the first few times we are exposed to an exercise, really the gains that we're seeing are almost more neurological in nature, just our body kind of understanding how it's actively recruiting all of the muscle fibers to create that movement. So I see those initial gains, but it's not really strength oriented. Then I get past that and I start to do it. So um, getting really comfortable, kind of as we all talked about, getting really comfortable with the process, not trying to seek new and novel and things and just staying really consistent, almost erring on the side of boring with some of it. And there's ways we can make it more fun and energizing, but that's the ultimate path to building strength and winning. And the example I'll use going along here, this is a the extreme example, but if you look at there's a sport of Olympic weightlifting, snatch and clean and jerk. If you look at these people, the elite in this sport are using those two movements 6 days a week, twice a day to get good, because it's rehearsing it, it's understanding it, it's overloading it, it's the consistency of those things that's creating that thing. Now, most of us don't need to go that aggressive, luckily, but having a little more consistency will make a huge difference.
You got Stephen Covey right there. Keep it the main thing, right? It's
Yeah.
simple within that space. I like how you said that linear progressive overload, and then what comes off as boring for whatever reason, we want to create variance out of to appease the individual
Yeah.
so they see or something different to keep them engaged and excited. The reality is what you just said. If you went from 100 to 105 the following week, that's progression. And then
Yep.
understanding how you're getting stronger within that actual lift or movement, whatever it may be. I always for our listeners, having you have a professional that's coaching you and training you, they're in that space for a reason. So leaning into them. And I always say, you want to go to the mechanic and say, nope, you don't want to change the oil that way, or the dentist, nope, you don't want to use that tool. So we don't necessarily want to end up dictating what the subject matter expert is doing. Give feedback 100%,
Mhm.
but keeping the main thing, and understanding the bigger picture of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. The question was based off of what Jamie just said. I want to get stronger. I want to build strength. So with that, this is going to be the process. So I love that.
Well, I wanna ask one more thing with that because I do think it's important for people to understand, like, how quickly to progress. Because I know there's, like, some guidance, like, never add more weight than, like, 10% of additional weight or things
Mhm.
like that. Is there any guidance for people to just understand within that? What's that look or is that all change? I don't know.
Yeah. I hesitate with some of the things because, kind of depends on where you start, and
Right.
where you're going. I think the terrible answer I'm gonna give here around the start is zoom out in the future and how is your body feeling and progressing matters quite a bit. Um, where we want to be though, most of the time that we're strength training, and I'm gonna call if you're brand new, if you're walking in, I have not done anything, give yourself 4 to 6 weeks of just kind of easing and introducing all this kind of loading on your body and those things to get comfortable with it. But as we get going, we want to stay around 2 to 3 reps from failure, often called reps in reserve. So I don't need to go to absolute failure and be straining and struggling and I can't complete something anymore. But if I could, and we should test ourselves here every once in a while, if I'm looking to do 8 of something, and if I could really do and I stop at 8, and I could do more than especially we'd say 12 there, which is 4, but